My pleasure to introduce Annette Sheppard, one of our very own glassmakers. They work with us for a long time here at the museum. And she is going to make a beautiful piece for us tonight. And yeah, this 2300 is a special show. It's a great party, and we're excited to be here. We're really excited to have Annette back here. It's been a while since she's been here. I was actually chatting with Annette earlier, and she said it's been 5 years. So way too long. My name is George. I work here at the museum, and I'm going to do some narration. If you guys have any questions or comments, I'd love to answer them for you. So this is going to be live streamed. Right now, there's not a whole lot of people here, but trust me, in about a half an hour, 45 minutes, this place is going to be filled. So get a good seat now. Now, I'd like to introduce G. Brian Jook. He's going to be assisting. Chris Rochelle, he just went out the back. He's going to be here too. And Catherine Ayers, she's also going to be helping. So we've got the whole CMOG team ready to help Annette. So Annette has a really special piece in mind for us tonight. We actually spent a little bit of time with this show called Blown Away, and Annette was a contestant on it. And she actually has one of her pieces that she made there over in one of the vitrines next to the window. And she told me that she wants to make one of those. Now that she has more help, she thinks it's going to be much more successful. But that piece was very successful. It's beautiful over there in the vitrine. All right. So this is going to be a vessel, a vase, with butterflies wrapped around the top of it, and it's going to have a narwhal on top of the butterfly, with a butterfly on top of the narwhal. She said she's not sure if she's going to do the narwhal. She's going to see if she has enough time. Now, her mother flew out all the way from California to watch the show. Connie Sheppard, she's here with us tonight, and I think that Connie wanted to see the narwhal on top of the piece. She does want the narwhal. We'll see how much time we have. We'll see how much how much we can get accomplished. Now, Annette actually pre-made some butterflies to make sure we have enough time. The glass making, you know, it happens pretty quickly sometimes, but when you have a very complicated piece, it takes a little while to put the whole thing together. Let me just ask out there, are there any glassmakers in the audience? I see a couple right here. I see one over there. I know there's a couple up the top over here. That's what I love about this party. All the glassmakers cannot stay away from a good party. Now, I'm sure that Annette talked with the team and has filled them in on how she's going to put this together. Annette is the gaffer. She's the lead person on the team. Like I said, we've all worked with Annette before, so we have a lot of experience with her, kind of know her style. Annette's one of my all-time favorite glassmakers to work with. She always has fun. She's always laughing. She never gets rattled. So G. Brian is over in the garage. This is a piece of equipment over there on the, looking at the stage. It's on the right side. You can actually see we're getting a close-up shot. I think G. Brian is going to pick up some color for Annette. So a lot of times when we use colored glass, we can use it in different forms. A lot of times here at the Hot Glass Show, we do demonstrations that last about 20 to 30 minutes long, and we'll use colored glass called frit, which is crushed up colored glass. It's real simple and real easy to use. By gathering the molten glass out of the furnace, you can just roll it in those chips of color. It'll stick to the surface, and then you can melt that color in and begin to make your piece. Now, when you want to make something a little more concentrated and use a more denser color, you can use bar. Bar is colored glass in a rod form. I'll actually hold up one of these rods of colored glass. You can see this one's real easy to see what it is. Nice bright orange. G. Brian, do you know what color that you picked up? Alabaster. So it's kind of like an off-white color. Now, Annette has a hollow stainless steel tube. This is called a blowpipe. And this is the beginning of how we start all of our pieces. If it's a blown object, we're going to select a blowpipe. So she preheated the end of it. She's getting ready. She's watching G. Brian. A lot of this really comes down to timing. So she's going to take some clear glass. She's going to shape it on the bench over here with a wooden spoon called a block. And then we do what we call an overlay. So G. Brian will get that color really hot. Annette will drop it right on the top of her bubble and push it all the way up over the edge of the iron. Now the glass left on the iron is called the moil. That's really unusable glass. It's basically what we hold onto the piece on the iron with. All of that will get recycled. All the glass off the iron is usable. So she'll take that colored glass and push it right up to the edge of the iron because that's usable glass. Now we are being live streamed. If we have any questions, we have Amanda over here. She's going to ask me what the question is, and I'll go back and tell her. Maybe I'll ask you guys to answer the question asked on the live stream. I see there's some docents out there that could probably answer any question that they ask. Any questions so far, Amanda? A lot of times we have friends all over the world that'll tune in and say hi. It's still early on. We're only a few minutes in. This is going to go till 8 o'clock. I think we have a panel discussion about the Blown Away show beginning at 8 o'clock. I think it's going to last an hour. Have you guys heard about that show, Blown Away? Yeah, it's a lot. It's really interesting. We were a part of the last show, and actually me and Catherine and G. Brian and Chris all went to help for the last episode. And it was really interesting. I mean, for us as glassmakers, especially here, we get videotaped all the time, and they're always doing promotional stuff. But it's a whole different setting than like making a TV program. So it was pretty interesting. We had a lot of fun. We were up there for 2 days, so we got a lot of time to chat about it, and it was fun. Are there any questions out here so far? You can talk about anything you want. You can ask us anything you'd like. Chris, your mom's laughing. Yes. How much does a giant pumpkin weigh? We have a pumpkin here that we put out every fall, actually 2 of them, and it's in the back of the green pickup truck. I think there might be flowers out there right now. I think there's flowers out there. But every fall we put that out there, and that pumpkin weighs 85 pounds. I think there was 8 people on the team that helped make that pumpkin. So usually the bigger the project, the bigger the piece, usually the more people on the team. And right here they go with the overlay. Watch this. You can see Annette dripping that colored glass, the alabaster, on the top of the clear bubble. Now she let that clear bubble cool down so it's not moving at all. And what this is going to allow her to do is heat the front of that and push that color back up over the clear bubble without the clear glass getting too hot and distorting. So really this is about temperature and control. And Annette has a lot of experience. She's been making glass for over 16 years, and so she's really good at it. Do we have a question? That was your question. Let me just make sure, but I'm pretty sure that Annette's been making glass for 16 years. Annette, we had a question. How long have you been making glass? I should remember because I was there. Yeah, believe it or not, Annette went to college over in Ithaca at Cornell University. And she came on the weekend and took a beginning glassblowing class. It was a weekend class. And she started out in the hot shop and I think ended up in the lamp shop. How did that work, Annette? Oh, you started in the lamp shop and ended up in the hot shop. I should have figured I got that backwards. So yeah, 16 years ago, Annette started making glass right here at the studio of the Corning Museum of Glass. I know a lot of people that get their start by taking a weekend class and end up getting hooked and making glass for the rest of their lives. I see a couple people right up there that I think might be hooked. Yeah. You got a good one. Is there a limit to how many times you can heat the glass? What do you guys think? No, you can heat it as many times as you'd like, as long as you don't get it too cold. Go back into the reheating furnace and let it explode or shatter from thermal shock. Once that happens, you're going to have to start again. But I've seen people here at the museum work on a piece for over 8 hours, continually heating it, shaping it, heating it, shaping it, and working on it for many, many hours without it. And actually, at the end, they put it into the oven and cool down, and hopefully the piece lasts forever. A lot of times we'll make something, we'll make a part or a section of something, and we'll put it into an oven and we'll cool it down to room temperature. And then we'll work on it, maybe do some cold work, grind, polish, whatever it is, and then heat that part back up slowly, giving it enough time to heat up where it doesn't crack and break, and then getting it to about 1,050 degrees or maybe 1,100 degrees so we can pick it back up, heat it in the reheating furnace, and join it to another section. So really the possibilities are endless. Now Annette's got that alabaster rolled up over the clear bubble. She's got a nice, even, symmetrical shape, and she's going to get ready to start gathering some clear over top of this. Now I noticed before she had some chunks of, or some pieces of color on those little marini. She's going to use those too. Perfect. So if you guys haven't noticed, the piece over here on the whiteboard, Annette drew this earlier, and this is what she's going to be making. And if you want to get a better view, actually in the vitrine over here, Annette actually has the piece that she made up in Canada for the show Blown Away. So you can go read the description and look at the piece, and this is what we're going to make. This is what Annette's going to make. So Annette's just asked Chris to get a wrap of some of the frit. She's actually sprinkling some of the frit out on the table, and she's going to get ready to, I think, roll some of that up. So every time we go back into the furnace and we take a layer of glass, we call that a gather. And when we're talking to our friends about, the work that we made that day, somebody asks us, well, how big was it? We don't tell them, oh, it was 100 pounds or it was 50 pounds. We usually say, oh, it was 3 gathers or it was 4 gathers. Because then they can really, visualize in their mind, especially if they're a glassmaker, of what the size was. If it's a larger piece, we'll say, oh, yeah, it was 3 gathers on a 3/4 iron or an 1.5 iron, whatever the case may be. Any questions so far? We have a couple questions here. Okay. How did we end up with a slogan on the back of our shirt, the Veep? New glass. Now, that's a good question. I am not sure. I'll have to ask. The first question in the audience is a question I can't answer. Do you believe it? Has anybody seen the New Glass Now show up here? It's fantastic. If you guys haven't seen it, you should check it out. It's 100 artists. It's amazing. There's some really cool pieces up there. Yes, you have a question. Are we going on the glass barge at all this year? Well, unfortunately, that was a one-time thing, I believe. Now, that was a fantastic opportunity to visit New York State and see all the little towns along the canal. G. Brian and Catherine, they were a huge part of it. Chris was on the glass barge. I was on the glass barge for a little bit. It was really a lot of fun. That's one thing, working here at the museum, you get a lot of chances and opportunities to do things you'd never imagine. I just think back when Annette actually started working at the museum, she got hired full-time to work on a cruise ship. So there was a cruise ship for 10 years, actually 3 of them, that traveled all around the world, and they had a hot glass show on the 15th deck. And so Annette spent the better part of 5 years traveling around the world making glass. And you know what? That's what this piece was inspired from. Actually, there's a picture of her visiting Venice over there in the case, and that was what the challenge was. We want you to bring in a picture and be inspired of what that picture is and show a feeling of what, what it means to you. And yeah, this is what this vase with the butterflies and the narwhal is on. I think the title of it was Disney World meets Christmas wrapped with butterflies with the narwhal. I believe that's what the title was. Another question? Oh, there's no perfect question for me. How many gathers is this going to take? Maybe we should ask the audience, and maybe we can get Annette to just keep gathering. 20 gathers. Who's up for 20 gathers? G. Brian's pointing the finger. Everybody's just kind of looking at each other like, I don't know. Now, Annette said that she's really excited to be back here. She feels really comfortable. This is like our home away from home. She spent a lot of time here. We spent a lot of time with Annette, really traveling around the world with her. I've been to so many places with Annette. I think the last trip that I was with her was down in Florida. We had a gig down there at another museum, and we spent about a month together making glass outside in February in Florida. Wasn't a bad gig. Annette, everybody wants to know how many gathers this is going to be. Everybody wants to know how many gathers this is going to be. 2 more gathers. So this is going to be a 3-gather piece. Now I can see by the size iron that she selected probably how many gathers she's going to make comfortably on this. The more glass you take, the bigger the iron, will help you. So she chose a pretty medium-sized iron, so 3 gathers will be a pretty good amount. That'll make a pretty large piece. Do you have a question? Yeah, what's your question? How do we make the furnaces heat? What do we use for fuel? That's a really good question. Well, here we're using natural gas and forced air. So we put a blower on the burner to really get high temperatures. Now you could use propane. Do you know what propane is? You might heat your house with it, or natural gas, the same thing. It's a gas. Now upstairs in our innovation stage, we have an all-electric hot shop, so it's heated with elements. So we like to say it's the difference of like cooking on an electric stove or cooking on a gas stove. Anybody that cooks would probably know the difference, and we really feel it here. Us as glassmakers, I think most of us would prefer to use a gas-fired furnace, but when they went out on the cruise ship, fire is their biggest fear, so they've actually developed reheating furnaces that run off of electricity, and so that's what we chose. Does that answer your question? I'll go one step further. We use natural gas, and you can see all the furnaces that we have, so we use quite a bit of it. I'm not sure how much we use, but every year Corning Natural Gas sends us a really nice Christmas card in a fruit basket, so we're probably a pretty good customer. I don't answer personal questions, only professional ones. What does glass blowing and working here at the museum mean to me? Well, I have to say, I don't know of too many jobs where you get to work with your friends all day long, and usually a lot of us will go home and watch YouTube videos of glass making, believe it or not. Now, Annette's adding this trail. Watch this. She's randomly wrapping that trail around the piece, and they just cut it loose. That machine right there, we call that a thread wrapper. Sometimes we call it a roller wrapper, but it allows you to add a really even trail from the top to the bottom with that tool. It's really, really nice. You can see G. Brian was turning it, or Annette was turning it, and G. Brian was adding the bit, and they were able to spread that all the way over the thing. We call that sometimes we'll actually do a technique called feathering, where you'll trail on a color from the top to the bottom, and then you can take an ice pick or some sharp tool and drag it up over the piece, and then drag it down over the piece, and it leaves, we call it feathering. If you only drag it one way, it's called festooning. If you drag it both ways, it's called feathering. Now, in the summertime, we just started our summer hours tonight, is our summer kickoff, so we're going to be open till 8 o'clock every night, and they started this show called The Late Show. This was probably 15 years ago, I think, And when they first started it, we were outside at our mobile hot shop. So out here, you can see that stage. There's actually a mobile hot shop out there that we would do shows in the summertime. And when we weren't out there in the summer, we would try to find places for it to go in the winter. And that's where me and Annette were working on the road show down in Florida. So we would do what was called the late show in the summer. And the last show of the day started at 6 o'clock, and they would say, oh, you have about an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes to make something that, you wouldn't normally make at a regular hot glass show. So you could make a larger piece or, do decoration that took a lot longer. And one of my favorite things to make was a feathered bottle. So I would make a 3-gather bottle with a feathering technique with a solid color underneath and 2 different color wraps around it. Yeah, so getting back to that question, personally, I love it. I can't imagine a better job. You forgot the question on the trip over here? I'll have to start coming to you. You can just wave me over there. I'll come over there and I'll get the question. How does propane differ from the electric that we have? Well, the biggest difference that I see is that, when they open the door, I'll stop chatting the next time they take a gather. And what happens is there's a safety feature on there. When you open the door, it turns the burner off because, it's a burner with forced air. So when you open the door, if it doesn't turn off, it's blowing 2100 degree temperature out at you. Yeah, she's opened the door right there. Now watch. When she closes it, listen to this. Can you hear that kick on and turn up? So it turns the burner off, and then when she closes the door, it heats it right back up. In a few seconds, that's going to turn back down. It just is keeping it at 2100 degrees. Now with the electric, it's not so responsive. When you open the door, you take your gather and you close it back up, you'll see that temperature drop about 30 degrees, and it takes a few minutes to recover from the temperature, just because those elements, aren't as responsive as the burner is. But what I do like about the electric is that when you close the door, you don't have to have a flue on it, so you save a lot of energy. With the electric, it gets back up to temperature, and then it turns off, and then it kicks on a little bit and turns off. Where there's a burner over here, a flue on the gas-fired furnace, and you'll see when that kicks on, there'll be a flame shooting out the top of it about this far. So check that out. Next time they take a gather, you'll see the flame kick on to the right side of that. And that's the difference. I think, there's pros and cons to everything. So yeah, this is the kickoff of Glass Fest, one of my favorite festivals. I'd almost say I like Glass Fest almost as much as Christmas. I know that's like blasphemy, isn't it? Everybody's like, wow, you're crazy. But the way I see it is after you get done making glass all day long, we like to say it's like Christmas morning coming into the annealer the next day. You open up the door and you get to see all the pieces that you made the day before with your friends. So most of the pieces that we make here take about 12 hours to cool down. It's called annealing. So we have to put it into an oven to slowly cool down overnight. And the thicker the piece, the longer it takes to cool. So this piece that we make tonight, it'll have some solid bits, but it'll still cool down between 12 and 16 hours. We'll be able to take a look at that probably tomorrow afternoon sometime. We'll probably turn the oven off at 8 o'clock tonight. Like I said, between 12 and 16 hours from now. Usually when we come in, the oven's at 150 degrees. We'll crack the doors and let it cool down a little more, a little faster. Because if you don't, if you leave the doors closed at 150 degrees, it takes a long time to cool down to room temperature from there. These ovens are all fairly brand new. This is a brand new area of the museum. I say brand new, it's opened up in March 21st of 2015. Did anybody come to the opening? A couple people, yeah. That was the glass got broken. Yeah, we had a fantastic party then too. I have to say the museum throws some pretty good parties. It was a really great beginning. Yeah. Well, that was really cool. So Annette's going to go back in for another gather. I'm not sure if this is her last one. She might do one more after this, but so she's taking that layer of glass. Now, when she does it, she makes it look really easy because she's taken thousands of gathers, but she's really focused on covering the whole thing evenly. This is called a strip gather. So she lets some of that glass run off into that bucket of water. That's actually our recycling program. That clear glass is 100% recyclable. We'll throw it back in the furnace tonight. Yes. The two furnaces, well, they're both different names. One's a melting furnace, one is a reheating furnace. And because we're here in Corning, where there's a long tradition of glass making, I'm allowed to say the name of the furnace on the left side is called a glory hole. Yep. Now, a lot of times I say that to people out of town, and they start laughing and snickering, and I'm like, what are they? What's so funny? I mean, for 30 years, it's always been called a glory hole. And yeah, we have a really long tradition here in Corning of glass making. For 151 years, glass making has been done here in Corning and in this room since 1951. So the Steuben Glass Factory opened up here in 1951 when the museum opened up. So it was a working glass factory in this space up until 2010. Now, unfortunately, it went out of business for a couple years in 2010, but the silver lining of that cloud was that the museum absorbed this space and we turned it into a hot shop where you could do demonstrations for 600 people. So we were happy about that. Yes? Annette just picked up frit that was heated. Now, I think that those were Marini, little pieces of Marini. Now, Marini is a type of glass. It's basically a thread of cane with a decoration on the inside. It can be really simple as far as little rings or something very complicated like a picture of something. And she had these little Marini heated up on a kiln shelf. And again, they had it sitting in this oven here. This is our, we call this a garage. Now, if you've seen the front of this, there's two openings. We have a two-car garage. Yeah. So we can have pieces over here. Now, this thing here, the yellow piece, is called a thermocouple. So this is where it's reading the temperature on this side. So on the left side, it's a little colder. It's about 1,030 degrees. Now over here, this is where the burner is. So this is where the hot section is. So when we want to put something in here and just keep it on hold, we'll put it on the cold side. Well, cold to a glassmaker is about 1,000 degrees. But it'll sit in there without cracking and breaking at 1,000 degrees. And then when we want to use it, we'll slide it over to the right side and start to heat it up. Now over there, it's probably about 1,350, 1,400 degrees. I'm not sure exactly because we don't have a thermocouple over here, but we can heat pieces there and go back into the reheating furnace without them cracking and breaking. All right, Amanda, what's your question? It's a tough one. Can you make something that can combine glass and diamonds? What do you guys think? I'm not sure. We are in a town where there's a specialty glass company called Corning Incorporated. And I know that they have over 65,000 different patents on glass. And as a glass maker, I've been making glass for 30 years, and I never realized that you could put glass with metal. I should have realized it because that's how they used to put the television tubes and connect them in the old televisions. So Corning has a type of glass that's compatible with a type of metal called Kovar. And we did a collaboration with Albert Paley. He's probably one of the world's most famous metalsmiths from Rochester, New York. And he came down and we did a bunch of sculpture where we did glass and hand-forged metal together. And we worked with him for probably about a month on and off. But the last week we were here with them, we set up our own furnace that would hold, I think, 500 pounds of glass. And he hand-forged literally a couple thousand pounds of metal. And we made pieces throughout that week that were over 100 pounds plus each piece. So it was really, really amazing to work with them. So, I'm not sure if they have a glass that could combine glass and diamonds, but maybe. I'm not sure. I would say if there's a question that I can't answer, you should get a hold of the the library at the Corning Museum of Glass, they would probably be happy to answer any question that I can. That's just a blanket statement. All right, so Annette is letting this cool down. She's sitting there, and you can see the color of the glass going from bright orange, and it's starting to get a little bit darker. And this is how she tells the temperature of it. You know, she doesn't have a thermocouple or any tool that she's reading the temperature. She's just looking at it, and she can tell from experience once it gets cold enough where she can gather more glass over top of it. She's got all of her tools prepared. She just put a little bit of water on that one tool. I usually during the day, when we have a crowd of people that have never been to Corning, I usually ask them what the tool is made out of. And nobody knows, but I hate to ask this crowd, because probably 90% of you are from Corning. How many people live within 50 miles of the museum? That's great. It's nice to see local people come and take advantage of the programming that we have here. I live in Watkins Glen, and I'm amazed at how many people I meet that have never been to the museum. Usually their kids have been because the kids will take a school trip here. All right, she's doing another strip gather. So she just took another nice big gather. What's nice about here is that she's got lots of help. So Chris is right there ready to jump in. G. Brian's got her tools all ready. A lot of times when we're making something larger, we'll jump in and we'll help turn. We call it turning pole, and one of us will give her a hand turning the iron. She's turning it, but she's got to hold it down. All that weight on the end of the rod is pulling up on it, so she's got to hold it down and turn it at the same time. Now, I don't know if people realize that there's a lot of physical activity that she's doing when you're making something this size. She'll inflate it a little bit. Now she's put a lot of decoration on here so far. I'm not sure how much more she's going to put on here. But yeah, this is actually folded up newspaper that she's using to shape the glass with. Would anybody have a guess what newspaper we're using? Of course, the Corning Leader. Yeah, we've tried the Star Gazette. Doesn't work. I'm not going to repeat that because we're live streamed. All right, so Chris is going to give a little reheat. Now you can see those doors on the reheating furnace. We call those barn doors because we can open up one half or both sides of it. And that's a pretty good size reheating furnace. A lot of times when we do these events, we'll use the giant hole. Hey, G. Brian, you want to give these guys show them what the giant hole looks like? This reheating furnace here, this is our large reheating furnace. He's going to open up all the doors on this. You can see what a cold reheating furnace looks like. That's a monster. When you have that at 2100 degrees, everybody feels it. Now you can see that she's shaping the glass. When she holds the iron up at a steep angle, she's letting gravity elongate the bubble. So she inflates it, and then she stretches it. So she's got a clear picture in her mind of what the piece is going to look like, and she'll continue to heat and shape it until she's there. Really? It's a parrot, though. my only fan. Amanda says somebody watching has a macaw, and every time I laugh, the parrot laughs. I don't know if how I should feel about that. All right, so these guys are going to start to stretch this out. You can see how they work together. G. Brian's helping turn it. Chris is going to give some inflation. He's blowing it up. She's shaping it with the paper tool. And as soon as she's satisfied with the amount of volume that she has, she'll tell Chris to stop. Now this part, this is called the jack line. This is probably the most important part of the whole process. This constriction is going to allow us to break this piece off the blowpipe, leaving it attached to a punty iron so we can flip it around and work on the top of the piece. So this constriction is really, really important. A lot of times when you first start making glass, it's hard to get the jack line in there because you're trying to put it in there when the glass is too cold. So Annette's working the glass is really hot. Most beginners are working it very cold. So usually what happens is that you don't have the jack line in there very well, and you go to transfer the piece, and you go to break it off, and the piece falls on the floor. Yeah, I've seen that happen many, many times. Not here, though. Never happens here.
I miss you guys.
Are there any questions out here?
Come back more often.
All right.
I'm back. Can I do some shows?
Now we're going to have a panel discussion, like I said, about the show that we were involved with called Blown Away. And like I said, Annette was one of the contestants. There were 10 contestants, and it's like a reality show, kind of like one of those baking shows. So, you know, it was an elimination and until there were 2 finalists. And at the last show, 6 of us glassmakers and Eric Meek, the manager of the Hot Glass Show, actually went up and were involved in the last challenge. And that was really, really interesting. Now, we're not allowed to say who won the piece. Trust me, all my glassmaking friends have been texting me and asking me on Facebook who won, but I'm not allowed to say. But it's going to come out this summer, and it'll be worth watching.
It's not standing up for me. This is great. Thanks, G. No, that was this one. Just gonna snap to you. Assume that you're paying close enough attention yet. I always try to make everything just barely enough glass.
So the vessel that Annette made for Blown Away, like I said, it's over in one of those vitrines. And she had a really nice, long, tapered shape. And sometimes we'll have a lip with the vessel where we'll stretch a little neck. But with this one, she didn't have that. She just leaves it a little bit closed up. So we'll see if she's going to stick with that same formula.
I think I blew it out too cold this time.
I see some more glassmakers have just arrived. That's where they always sit, up there in that corner. That way they can heckle the glassmaker here at the bench. Has anybody here taken a class at the studio? A couple people. Krista is up there. She actually teaches a lot of classes at the studio. Everybody should sign up and take a class from her. Like I said, that's where Annette started 16 years ago. She took a weekend class at the studio. So this is where she's really going to start to stretch this out. You can really see she's been focusing the temperature right on the bottom 2/3 of the vessel. When she comes out, she's going to stretch it. Sometimes we'll swing it. We want to really stretch it quickly, but I think she's just going to hold it at that steep angle and stretch it a little bit at a time. Hey, how's it going? That's what's great about these parties. All your old friends show up. You can see it's really stretching now. You can see how it gets that nice natural taper. Just by heating it, she had that really round bubble, and now it's starting to get really long and tapered at the tip. Yeah, what's your question? Is there glass inside of that? Well, this is a vessel, so you know, it's hollow on the inside. So you saw how she inflated it and blew it up, and now she's shaping the outside. So if you think about this picture, it's the same thing. It's hollow, so you can stick your hand right inside of it. Go ahead, I dare ya. Yeah, so this is a hollow piece of glass. We call this a vessel, and she's using that paper to shape it. Now that's the interesting part about glass making is that you can heat it, it makes it soft, and then you can shape the outside of it. Now, I know other people that will actually work inside the bubble, so they've had these special tools made up where they make a bubble, they'll open the tip of it, and then they reach on the inside and use inside sculpting tools to shape whatever it is they want to make. I know there's this really famous glassmaker named Martin Yanetsky, and he makes faces and heads out of glass just like this. And he's going to be teaching a class here this summer, and usually what we do is every class that they have, we invite the artist over to do a demonstration here on Thursday night. So on Thursday night, when the late show is happening, from 6 until 8, that guest artist will come over and make a piece. And usually they bring their class, and it's usually a lot of fun. Martin came here one time, and he made a bull's head that was literally the size of a bull, and it took him about 4.5 hours. Yeah, it was really cool to watch, though. How you doing, Louise and Joe? So they're getting ready to flatten the bottom. Now, this vessel form, this will be a fairly quick part of the process. I mean, she's been working on this for about maybe 35, 40 minutes. Once she has the vessel all made, she's going to add all those butterflies to it, and then maybe the narwhal if she has enough time. I'm hoping she has enough time. Now, if you look at the piece right now, you can see the bottom is still glowing a little orange. That's because she's left a little bit of thickness down there, so it stays a little bit hotter. So that's one thing when you're making glass you really have to think about is the thickness of the vessel. And usually at the bottom, you always want it to be a little bit thicker, so when you attach the punty iron to it, that when you go to remove it, it doesn't break a hole in the bottom of your piece. I've seen that happen a lot too. Is they'll blow the piece out too thin at the bottom, they'll attach the punty iron, everything looks okay right till the very end, and you go to remove it, and there'll be a big hole in the bottom. I see somebody up there smiling. They know what I'm talking about. So here comes the punty transfer. This is another really tricky part of the process. So everything has to go very smoothly at this part. So G. Brian is, we call this flashing the piece. He's just giving it a quick overall heat, not to change the shape, but just to keep it above 1,000 degrees. Chris, he's got a little bit of glass on this solid rod. This is the punty iron. This is going to act like a handle. So we'll attach that in the center of the piece, break it off of the blowpipe. That'll leave a hole in the front of it so we can open it up and finish the top of the piece. So this is a lot of the times how you can tell if a piece is handmade. It'll have a little punty scar on the bottom of it. You know another way you can tell if a piece is handmade? You turn it over and you look at the price tag. All right, so they've stuck it on the bottom. They're turning it to make sure it's in the center. She's going to file this with a wet diamond file right around that constriction. You see that she has a really nice tight constriction off the end of the blowpipe. With a little tap, the piece breaks off, Chris catches it, and the crowd goes wild. You guys have been very quiet for Glass Fest. We should have a lot more noise in here. So now if you look up on the screen, you can see the hole left from the blowpipe. So now she's going to spend a little bit of time getting that hot and soft again. Now, I hate to keep bringing up all the things that can go wrong, but this is another thing that can happen, is if you wait too long and you let the piece get too cold, when you go back into the reheating furnace, it can crack and break also. I've seen that happen a few times. It looks like Annette's good, though. There's no cracks in the top, and she's going to start to heat the front and start to change the shape of it. What's your question? Yes? Have I ever seen any mistakes here? Absolutely not. Never. He knows I'm lying. He used to work here. Yeah, any mistake you can imagine, we've done, we've tried. And I do remember the golf ball. Yeah. It's funny you should mention that. You know, Glass Fest has been here for 10 years. Does anybody remember what we used to celebrate before that? The LPGA, yeah. So the last year the LPGA was here, they asked me to do they asked me to do the 2300, and so we had this huge mold. It's actually right there, underneath of that table, and so I figured, hey, the LPGA is here. I'm gonna make a golf tee and a giant golf ball to put on the top of it. It worked out fabulous. It was great. Louise, she used to work here too. She's laughing. She was probably watching. But yeah, we made a giant, giant golf ball, and we were on the outside stage. I'm going to blame it because we were outside. We got the thing on the tee. We went in for a flash, and it exploded like you've never believed. It sounded like a bomb going off. It was fantastic. Yep. I don't know how you follow that up, but it was great. Amanda, what's your question? Yeah. Well, that's a good question. If you just mess it up a little bit, can you fix it? I would say most glassblowers go by the motto, it's not what you can make, it's what you can fix. Yep. You can make mistakes, but you can totally fix them if you're good enough. Now, if the piece blows up and ends up in the oven, I don't think we're going to go back from there, but I've seen a lot of people make mistakes and totally fix it and be fine. Now, again, they flipped this around so you can start to see the front of this glowing orange again. That's a really good shot. You can really see the heat. Some of those chips of color in the top of that, you can tell are absorbing more heat than the rest of it, so they're glowing bright orange. Now, sometimes when you're making a piece that has many different chips of color in there, it can make it a challenge. Because you really, most of the time, want to make things symmetrical and even. And if you have uneven temperature, it can be hard. But look at this. She's trimming the glass. She's cutting off a little bit of that material off the front. Now, she does this for a couple of different reasons. Usually where you break it free from the jack line, sometimes it can be a little bit uneven, or sometimes it can be a little bit thicker. So if she wants to make it thinner, she just uses those tweezers to pull and stretch, and then use those scissors to cut in and around the top of the piece. Now she just took a tool out called a Soffietta. This is a bent aluminum cone that she can actually inflate the top of the piece. So she's going to use this to add a little bit of volume, but also to change the shape. If you look at the sides of it, you'll see how it comes up, and it's a little bit flat at the top. This is going to allow her to really blow it out nice and round and get that beautiful symmetrical shape. So there you can see her inflate that, blowing that right up. Now I introduced everybody on the stage. Annette Sheppard, she's our master glassblower, our lead gaffer. She's the one running the show. G. Brian, Chris, Catherine, they work here full time. Eric, he's the cameraman. We also have a guest person on the stage, Nick Uhas. He's actually was on the panel of the show Blown Away. So, yeah, that's why he's here. Does anybody know Nick from YouTube? You guys should go home and Google it. Look up YouTube, Nick Uhas, and yeah, you'll see some cool stuff. All right, so I think they're pretty close to being finished with the shape. So Annette told me that she made some parts earlier, and they're actually butterflies, and they're in this box over here. This is the garage, and I'm not sure if we talked about this before she started. We're not sure if she's going to use the ones in the garage, or she said that she has a lot of help here, so she might just have bits brought over and make the butterflies on the fly and attach them to the top of it. Now, the one over there in the vitrine that she made for the show actually has a bunch of butterflies on it, so she's going to start going and making all these and attaching them to the top of the piece. So what's the scoop, Chris? Are you guys going to use any of those ones? She's going to do both. The last time Annette made this piece, like I said, she was on a reality TV show with probably 5 cameras in her face when she was trying to make this. The only thing more nerve-wracking than that is having 600 people live while you're making glass when anything can go wrong. So Catherine just gathered up a bit. She's got some color on it. Now they just rolled it in those chips of color. All those jars on the table, that's all crushed up colored glass called frit. And she chose all those colors beforehand. So they're all on the table. Now I'm not sure if these are all the butterflies are all gonna be the same color. Annette just got a crimp tool. Like I said, this town has a long history of glass making. And Annette just asked Chris where the crimp tool came from. That's an old Steuben factory crimp tool. So we're trying to keep the tradition alive. All right, so G. Brian's flashing the whole thing. Now they're going to heat the front. So G. Brian has a pretty important job. He needs to heat the piece so it doesn't crack and break, but not have it too hot where it's moving when they go to add this bit. So this is the first bit. She's going to cut it free. We have this stand over here with 2 torches on it. The one torch, we call it a fluffy torch. So it gives you an overall heat. You can heat a large area of the vessel. We also have this other torch where you can really spot heat a certain area of it to heat just that area so you can change the shape of it. So Chris has another one. We have 3 different sizes of the smaller torch. The smaller torch gives you a way more intense heat though. You can really heat the glass up fast with that, but just a small area. Catherine's gonna begin the next piece. And you can see that Annette's started to change the shape of it. She cut into it, using the tweezers to flatten out those wings. G. Brian has that the perfect temperature, not moving at all, and still hot. Are there any other questions in here? I saw a few people just arrive. For those people who have just arrived, this is Annette Sheppard. She's our guest demonstrator here tonight. She's working with the CMOG team. Now, one thing about Annette is she worked with us for 5 years ago. So she's been making glass for a long time, for 16 years, and we thought it would be great to have her come back to kick off Glass Fest and introduce everybody to CMOG with the Blown Away project. Annette, do you know how many butterflies that you had on the first piece? It was a lot. How many hours did you get to make that piece for the Blown Away series? Was it 4 or 5 hours? Now she actually was working with an assistant. She got one assistant for the Blown Away series, and they were from a local college, Sheridan College. So she'd never worked with them before. So she has a big advantage tonight. All of these folks that she's working with have been making glass for a long time also, and has worked with Annette before. So Chris has the butterflies that she made earlier, and so they're on a steel paddle. And you can see that she picks them up and she spot heats the bottom of it so she can fuse it onto the top of the vessel. Now, what's important is that it's hot enough to stick properly, because if it's too cold, when we go to break it off the punchy at the end, some of those pieces can pop off if they're not on there properly. I've seen that happen before too. So she's going to start to stack these one on top of the other. So in between each one, Chris takes a quick flash in the reheating furnace, making sure it stays connected. Where she shears those, it'd be very easy for those to crack and break and split apart right there. Now Chris stays underneath there with a shovel just in case that she drops it from the tweezers. That glass is very slippery. It's rigid. I mean, it's hard, still hot. But when you try to pick up something with those tweezers, sometimes they'll slip right out of the ends of them. So Chris just waits there with the shovel just in case he needs to catch them. So this is the kickoff of Glass Fest. Like I said, our summer hours start tonight. We're going to be open till 8 o'clock all summer long. And we're actually blowing glass over at Centerway Square. So if you guys get a chance and you're over on Market Street this weekend, we're going to be making glass over there. I think G. Bryan's scheduled to work all weekend long at Centerway. Yeah, so the question is, how do we get the colors in the glass? And you noticed when the colors aren't hot, they look dark. Well, Catherine right there, you see she's putting that glass, that's crushed up colored glass called frit. And we add different metal oxides to the clear glass to make the different colors. So our clear glass in the furnace is called soda lime glass, and the three ingredients that we use to make that is sand, soda ash, and limestone. You mix all those three, and you put that in the furnace, and you turn it up to 2100 degrees, you're going to get clear molten glass. But then if you want to color it, you could say add some cobalt oxide, and you'll get cobalt blue. Well, when you see it's red coming out of there, it's because of the temperature. So at 2100 degrees, it's glowing bright orange. I'm going to step away from this speaker over here. But when you heat the glass up, it turns hot and turns red. So you can see right where she's heating it with the torch, how it's glowing. Exactly, yeah. So the metal irons, before Annette took a gather of glass on that, we preheated the metal so the glass would stick to it. You have to have it a little cherry red so the glass will stick to it. But to get the true color, you add different metal oxides to the clear formula. You're welcome. You have a tricky one. Uh-oh. This question might jinx us. Well, maybe we shouldn't even ask it. All right. what would we do if the butterfly fell off and we couldn't save it? I would say we'd make another one. We have 1,000 pounds of clear glass in the furnace. We're going to make butterflies until Annette's happy, and we're not leaving until she's happy. How does that sound? 2 thumbs up. All right. Now, I have seen, something fall off like that. Sometimes when you're making something, you'll make a part that's really complicated and spend hours working on it. And then you go to pick it up and you go to heat it and it'll crack and break. And then you have to start over usually from the beginning, and it takes hours and hours of prep work to fix the mistake. But I would say with a butterfly like this, look at how fast Annette's making these. She's making them one right after the other. Probably within a couple minutes, she's got another butterfly already made. Did somebody just say this looked easy? It does look easy, doesn't it? I would say that's because of Annette's experience, though. She's got a lot of experience. You have a question up here? All right, what's your question? How are those glasses of wine made? Well, you get the glass and you go to the wine bar. Actually, wine glasses can be made, a couple different ways. We like to make wine glasses here at the museum by hand. But well, not that one. If you're making wine glasses to have a party like this, and we were tasked to do that, we would be making wine glasses for probably 6 months, and it wouldn't be a very good demonstration. Yeah, so I'm not sure where they're purchasing the wine glasses, but wherever they are, they're being manufactured by machine. So glasses like that are being manufactured by machine. There used to be a company called Ashram Sylvania. It was about 45 minutes south of here in Pennsylvania. They used to make the incandescent light bulb, and they were all made by machine. And actually, the first light bulbs made for Thomas Edison were made right here in Corning, New York, and they were all handmade until the demand got to be too much, and that's when they came up with a machine that could make the light bulbs. So like I was talking about earlier, that Corning has a long history of glassmaking. It's been here for 151 years, and at one time, there used to be over 2,500 glassmakers here in town. They were actually blowing glass by hand. But I don't think the number's that high anymore. I think that all is relative to the amount of bars that they used to have on Market Street. Yeah. Market Street used to have 110 bars on Market Street. Believe it or not, I don't know if there's a relationship there, but there might be. Yeah, so the easy answer is those wine glasses are made by machine. And if you can tell by the, what they cost to make. If you're making a really nice, handmade wine glass, I know of a gentleman named Michael Shunky, and he makes a production of sets of wine glasses, and he sells them for $450 a stem. Yeah, so I wasn't kidding about the price. Yeah. We have a question up here. All right. Yeah, that's a really good question. Why doesn't the iron get hot? Actually, the metal rods, they do conduct heat about a third of the way up the iron. You can see where they're discolored or tarnished, and that's where they get really hot. If you're making something for a long time and you have to heat really deep inside the reheating furnace, the heat will travel farther up the iron. But then we have a tool called a pipe cooler. It's that tool, that square box down there with a towel on it. You see the trough on the right side of the table? We can cool the pipe down with that tool. But most of the time, if they're touching it with bare hand, it's room temperature. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, that's one question we get asked a lot is why don't we wear gloves, or how often do we get burned? And it's not very often, but usually when we get burned, it's on the metal objects, either the hand tools or the metal rods. All right, so Chris is got one butterfly left on the paddle. She didn't want either of those, so she's gonna make a couple more. Are those the last two in the garage? Maybe we should pass those around the audience so they can have a good look at them. Is anybody paying attention? Yeah, I really like watching it at this point because every time G. Brian takes the flash, he's letting it center up, so it gets a little off center, and he brings it to the high side and lets it fall back to the middle. And those butterflies are staying exactly where she puts them on. He's not getting it too hot, and he's also not getting it too cold. So it's a real juggling act for G. Brian. This is what makes it really nice for Annette. She's basically keeping track of everything also, but having somebody be able to flash this while she makes the butterflies makes a big difference. Now you notice that she did put a glove on her right hand, and that's because she's really close to the glass, and she's using that torch to spot heat those, and it comes a little uncomfortable after a while. So most of the time when we're using a glove, it's on our hand that's working on the glass, especially if you're making a really large piece. Yeah. Our glory hole, I think we have it set at 2150. But we have these are all state-of-the-art reheating furnaces. We actually had a gentleman named Fred Metz. He owns a company called Spiral Arts. And if you want to have your own hot shop and you can afford them, you should have Fred Metz build your equipment, because this is by far the best equipment that you can buy. And on that reheating furnace, we actually have a controller so we can turn it up or turn it down exactly the temperature we want. Most glory holes, they have a gas valve and an air valve, and you have to play with the two until the dial is somewhere close and you're like, oh yeah, that looks about the right temperature. I really like watching the dance. Watching all these guys working around each other, and they're all holding irons that have 2100 degrees glass on the end of it, and nobody's getting burned. That's a good sign. Now, the more butterflies she puts on this, and the farther out it goes, the trickier it is for G. Brian to flash this. This is my old friend Peter Carter. He used to work here too. How you doing, buddy? See, Annette didn't even know Peter was here. Do I need one, Peter? Boy, I hate to turn down a free beer, but I'm on the clock right now. Now you see how G. Brian slides the iron out at an angle, and that lets Annette get a little closer to the top of that, so she doesn't have to move around. He's bringing the piece right to her, and this makes a big difference too. If you have a team of glassmakers that you're used to working with, things go pretty smoothly most of the time. I'll catch you later. You see how there's a little subtle movement in the piece? Just letting that fall off center just a little bit. Sometimes he's thinking ahead, so when he's on his way over to the bench, to the workstation, he lets it fall off center the opposite way. So when she's ready to put the butterfly on, he flips it over and it's falling back on center so she can attach it. So it never really gets that far off center. Amanda, how many people are watching live right now?
I don't know, maybe my dad's here.
We want to know because Annette's dad is in San Diego right now, And we wanted to give a shout out to him, seeing how his daughter's here making glass in front of 600 people. 130 people watching. That's not too bad. So she's just giving it little subtle tweaks too. Once she adds that on there, she gives a little heat. She can move that and place it exactly where she wants it. Now the one that she has over here that she made in the vitrine, she actually has a piece similar to this that she made on the show Blown Away. And yeah, if you haven't seen it, before you leave, you should check it out. And the butterfly kind of comes up and swoops around the top. Now the one over here in the vitrine has a narwhal on the top of it also. And she said if she has enough time that she's going to put a narwhal on it. Eric, the cameraman, is doing a great job getting close-up shots. That's one nice thing about this area here, even in the back, when you're really far away, you get a really close-up view of what's happening because the cinematography is really focusing that really close-up shot. Look at this, there it is. That is perfect. You can really see where she's heating the underside of it. Louise, you have a question? Is this a trick question? When it cools down, what color is it going to be? Well, that's a good question. She's got some chips of Marini in here. I'm not sure what color those are. She's got some gold ruby. I know she used alabaster for the main color underneath of the vase, and then she rolled it in a bunch of chips. You know what? I'll go back and ask her exactly what colors she used. Now, you can't really tell the true color until it cools down completely. So we're not going to know until tomorrow. What color are they using? So for the butterflies, we have aubergine, the dark purple, hyacinth violet, amethyst, fuchsia, and yellowish aurora. It's going from the bottom to the top. Was it that in the order that you told me? Dark to light. Do you think you could recite that again? I'm not going to make you do that. So it starts out purplish, it goes all the way up to lighter, and I can tell when she heats the colors now that they're getting much lighter. The first ones are fairly dense, but there's some dark purples, some light purples, and I'm not sure how many more she's going to put on here. So she's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 colors out on the table. We only told her she could have 11, but she decided to go for that one more, the aubergine. I think, we have a lot of glass artists that come here and work, and when you have your own studio, you usually have a certain palette of color that you work with. But when you come here, we have a color card over there with a bunch of colors on there, but downstairs, that's where the gold vault is. We have every color imaginable. You can go down there and literally spend an hour choosing through colors. So I have never seen an artist come here and say that we had a color that we didn't have a color that they wanted to use. Hey, Annette, did you want to put any fracks or anything in the oven to lay this down, or were you going to try to stand it up? I'm just asking, just, you know, out of habit. Yeah, we've got some fracks. I just noticed that she's got a really small bottom on her piece, and I mean, it's perfect. It's exactly what she's going for. But sometimes when you add bits around the top of it, you know, especially if it's on one side, it can make it a little bit heavier. Or if the punchy doesn't come off perfectly and it's, you know, not going to stand perfect in the bottom, you know, just as a little insurance, we have this material called fiber fracks. It's like a blanket that you can put into the oven, and then you can lay the piece down on the fracks and keep it from falling over and all those butterflies breaking off of them. Now that's not going to happen. We're going to make sure of that. But we're going to get some fracks and put it into the oven just to make sure. I think that we had some fracks in this oven over here. There it is. So this is that material I was talking about. This is the fiber fracks. So we can lay it down there. It's a real soft material, so I'll stick it into one of the ovens just to make sure it's warm. And then she can, if she needs it, she's got it. If she doesn't need it, she doesn't have to use it. So I see there's some ribbon in this oven. We actually had a ribbon cutting ceremony at 5:30 to kick off Glass Fest. So that's the only thing in that bottom oven besides this piece. That's another thing that we really made sure of when we built this hot shop, is to make sure that we had enough annealing space. All of these rectangular boxes at the edges of the stage are all cooling ovens. So we have these 8 out here. We have another 4 in the back. So I've never seen us run out of annealing space. I've seen us come close. About a month ago, we had a gentleman named Jim Mongrain come and work for a weekend, and we made these giant orbs. We made 8 a day, and so we filled up one side of the oven one day, and on Sunday we filled up the other side. So the question is, can colors separate in the heating process? And if you add 2 colors together, you know, that are too far away on the spectrum, glass has what's called the COE, the coefficient of expansion. And if you add 2 glasses together that aren't compatible, they can separate. And I've seen it happen a lot. Once the piece has cooled down, the color isn't compatible and it'll crack the glass. And I've also seen the piece crack before it should have in the heating process also, and I would say that's because that's too far away on the chart there. Mostly yellows and oranges and reds. They're the really stiff colors. And then you have soft colors like, you know, black and purple and green. So Annette and Catherine are chatting back and forth, probably talking about what she wants next. She's looking at the piece, deciding where she wants to add some more. Are there any questions in the audience? Yeah. Why do some of them on the screen look a little orange? It's because of the temperature. Yeah, so when she goes to heat it with the torch, you'll notice it turns orange, and then when they stop heating it, it starts to turn a little darker, and that's because of the temperature. Yep, they're trying to do they are doing a really good job at keeping the whole thing warm enough where it stays connected. So They have to keep it above 1,000 degrees. If it falls below that, they run the risk of it cracking and breaking. Now she's using that torch, that fluffy torch right now, to spot heat the bottom of the piece. This is a way that she can add temperature to the bottom without getting all those butterflies too hot and moving out of control. Where she's attached those, it's a really fine attachment point. So if they overheat it, it's just gonna get a little crazy on them.
Oh my god, that was my favorite, the pipe bomb. You're sculpting that the same way? I'm gonna sculpt that the same way. It's gonna be a lot stronger on the shoulder. And then I'll heat it up, straighten up the top a little bit, and like set it, get some heat back to the bottom.
All right, Annette's talking to the team, explaining exactly what she's gonna do. Communication is very important.
Pipe bomb, one of my favorites. The alien dog that eats people and throws up bugs. Another favorite. Whatever it was, this Mizo bag, get it over that one thumb.
I think I just heard Annette ask G. Brian what kind of beer that they had for her out back after the show. All right, I think they're going to do a couple more butterflies. Catherine, what's the consensus? How many more are you going to do? One more. The last one. The grand finale. What are we going to do for the grand finale? Oh, it's got to be better than that. This is Glass Fest. All right. It's amazing. You know, when we do demonstrations here throughout the day, people ask us what we do with our glass, and you know, we don't sell it, we don't take it to the gift shop. We actually raffle it off throughout the show. And it's real easy to get people to cheer when you're giving away free glass. Yeah, people love that. So you can see that Annette just broke that little butterfly off on a wooden paddle. Now that wooden paddle is great because it's not drawing a lot of temperature out of the piece of glass. If she's got that metal table there, she made sure that she didn't put it on the metal table because sometimes that'll crack and break part of the piece. This might be the last one. Look at that. She put that one butterfly off by itself a little bit. Very artistic. All right. So when they get to the end, they're going to flash the piece. You know, they've been taking all these flashes in and out of the reheating furnace, making sure that it stays hot. At the very end, they're going to flash it a few times to make sure that the temperature's even throughout the whole piece. Even all those little butterflies that are delicately attached to the top of it, and the bottom of the piece where it's connected to the Punty iron, they're going to make sure the whole thing is just the right temperature. They're going to break it free. Now sometimes we'll take, it leaves a little sharp edge around the bottom where it was attached to the Punty iron, and we can take that torch that she's been using for the butterflies, and we can fire polish the bottom. But sometimes if you have a lot of delicate pieces around the top and you don't want to spend those 10 seconds while the piece is cooling down, we can put it into the oven, cool it down completely, and then grind and polish that sharp edge. So we'll see what Annette's going to do. A question? Yeah. Hold on one second. I'll get to your question. It's really loud here with the torch. Just hold on 1 second. Go ahead. How do they know that it's the same temperature throughout? Well, the easy answer is experience. She's looking at the piece, and she just knows from making thousands and thousands of pieces and having some failures what temperature she needs to have it at. If it's moving around too much, it's too hot. If it's moving around very little and she goes to take it off and it cracks and breaks, well, she knows it's too cold. It's always, yeah, it's intuition. It's always a little risky. So we want you to cross your fingers right at that time. I'll tell you when it's going to happen, okay? We want to send Annette some good vibes. Now, this is the part where it's very stressful. Somebody just asked me to ask Annette, Annette, was this more stressful or was the show more stressful? Hold on. She's getting ready to do it. You guys ready? She's adding water. The close-up shot. Chris has got his PPE on, his personal protective equipment. A little tap. And it breaks off and the crowd goes wild. Look at this. The bottom, there's fracks on the left side and there's room on the right if they want to stand it up. All right, into the oven it goes. How about a big round of applause for Annette Sheppard kicking off Glass Fest with a beautiful piece. Now, Annette has just took some more glass, so she still has 32 minutes left. And I don't know of any glassmaker that quits before the time is up.
So, George, I do want to just take a moment to give a little plug to everything else that's going on tonight. There's a band in the auditorium that you would pay $50 to see anywhere else. They're amazing. So I would really encourage you guys, if you get a chance, to pop into the auditorium and check out Molehill. They're really rocking it in the auditorium. Outside, there's music going on. It's a beautiful evening. And then when Annette finishes here, we're going to reset the stage a little bit, and then we are going to have the panel discussion, which I'm sure George has been talking about at 8 o'clock in here, talking about Blown Away. So if you do wander around, please come on back to learn a little bit more about the series that were featured on Netflix. Okay, and just so y'all know, just so you can plan your evening accordingly, the bars close at 10 till 8. So even though we're going to be here until 9 o'clock, fair warning, the bar closes at 10 till 8.
Annette, hurry up. Hurry up, Annette.
So, important information. And everybody, thanks for coming this evening.
All right. You had a question? How many of these pieces has Annette made over how many years? That's a really good question. So, Annette, this is her second time making this piece. The first time, she was on a reality show called Blown Away, and the piece that she made is over there in the vitrine, and so you can go check it out after you finish watching her. So this is just like a one-off sculptural piece that she did for them there on the show, and she wanted to recreate it here because just to tie everything all in. She did say, I think she's had a little bit easier time here because she's got a professional team of glassmakers working with her that she's worked with for many years, and up there she didn't have. So a little bit different. Eric shouldn't have told everybody that the bar's closed at 10 of 8. Everybody's leaving. Actually, there's a bar here and a bar over here. So if you guys need a drink, you don't have to go too far.
Catherine, I can take that from you whenever.
So I believe this is going to be the Norwal. Sometimes you can make pieces and you can put them together as a glass artist when the pieces are cold. We call it cold fusion. It's actually glue. So I assume that Annette's probably gonna do some cold fusion with the Norwal because it's already in the oven. I have to say, Annette's mother's in the audience, and she really was adamant about the Norwal. And I agree, it makes the piece. You'll notice if you go look in the vitrine, sitting on top of all those butterflies. She's adding the tail.
Thanks, friend. I just
Look at the handoff. Now, Annette, when you were on the cruise ship traveling up through Alaska, did you see any narwhals on your journey? You never made it to Alaska? Well, then you quit too soon. How many countries did you visit when you were on the cruise ship? Her total's at like 60 now. So she's visited over 60 countries. Yes? If you're here tomorrow morning, it'll be a little too soon. So usually tomorrow afternoon, it'll be a little bit better. You know, once we put it into the oven, it has to cool down slowly overnight, and that is all determined by the thickness of the piece. This piece isn't very thick, so it'll cool down in about 12 to 16 hours. And what I find is usually when we turn the ovens off, we come in the next day, usually we turn them off at 5 o'clock, if it's not the summertime, and we come in the morning about 11 o'clock in the morning, they're at 150 degrees, and we'll pop the doors a little bit to let them cool down for about an hour. So I would say you'd be pretty close if maybe 1 o'clock, maybe 2 o'clock. If we pull it out too hot, it's going to crack and break. So we like it to cool down to room temperature. Even 150 degrees, I know from experience of pulling a piece out of the oven and setting it on the table, and the foot will crack. And then you spend all that time and energy, and then the piece is no good. So we make sure that, especially if a guest artist is here, to make sure that the annealing process is done correctly. I would say probably by 1 to 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, this will be cool. Maybe we can put a picture of it online, though, and you could take a picture, or you could see it then. I think some of the pieces we do that with. But you know, this is Glass Fest weekend. You should be here till Sunday.
Yeah. It's just like all of a sudden it's quiet. Yeah, I'm just inserting quiet. Right? Done with the gray. Thank you.
What's that? It's a narwhal. A narwhal. Yeah, so she actually has a piece over here in the case with a narwhal on the top of it. I think that she'll probably transfer this to a punty iron to put the horn on it. I don't know if it's a horn or a tooth. So it looks like she's got 2 butterflies on the narwhal. She just asked Chris to make a little tack punty. So that's telling Chris that she wants it on there very, very slightly so she can remove it easily at the end. So I think Chris is going to use that same iron for the transfer punty. He just trimmed off all that extra clear glass. He's going to shape it on the table, cool it down, point it up, and then bring it over, and they'll attach it to that little clear bit that they just added on the bottom. We're getting real close, though. She's going to use a different color. Catherine's going to go choose it from the color cart. So this is the other Punty transfer. Now you can see that this isn't straight on. Chris has it up and down. A little bit of water and that constriction and just a slightest of tap and it comes off. Yeah. How does one get a piece of original artwork from the museum? Well, you have to come to as many shows as it takes to win one. So usually at the end of the show, we have a raffle, and we use this thing called the lucky light. And it shines around the audience and chooses usually the most enthusiastic person in the crowd. And they get to take your wife would be the most enthusiastic person? Where's your wife?
That's the smallest optic hole we have. It's gonna be
She looks like she would be an enthusiastic person. so I'll tell you, because it's Glass Fest, if you guys come back tomorrow, usually your tickets are good for 2 days. So you come back tomorrow and you watch the show and you tell them before the show starts that you talked to George the night before and he told you guys that they were going to do a raffle, all right? And they'll make sure they do it. I swear. All right, I'm scheduled to work tomorrow, so I might come down and make sure that you're the most enthusiastic person. Jill, it's nice to meet you, Jill. Welcome to Glass Fest. Corning, what's the manufacturing of eyeglasses? You're out of my realm of expertise. I know about glassmaking here, but if there's a question about glass that you have, you can always email the Rakow Research Library, and there's librarians over there that'll answer any question that you want to know. Eyeglasses are tricky. It's funny you mentioned that because I went to the eye doctor today, and he told me that I had perfect vision. Hey! A lot of people think that, working in front of the reheating furnace all day long hurts your eyes. But no, you see, we had these shields. You can see the shield in front of Chris, so you can look through that welder's glass, and it doesn't affect your eyes. How late can you get another drink? They said 10 of you got 10 minutes. 10 minutes. See you tomorrow. Yeah. How much is here that wasn't here 100 years ago? Well, that's a good question. Look at this. They're putting on the last little bit. Look at that. They're twisting it up. You don't want to miss this. Twist, twist, twist. She's going to cut it at a point. And look at that. I think that finishes that off beautifully. All right. Well, the difference is 100 years ago, you would have had a lot more glass making here in this town. There used to be 7 stacks over there across the river where they made glass. Literally a couple thousand of glass makers making glass. What they didn't have was a demonstration that people would tell you what was going on. Yeah, so this is pretty new. I think the Hot Glass show started in, I think it was 1999. And we've been doing glass blowing demonstrations every day the museum's opened. We've never missed a day. And before, you would probably have to ask a glass maker, but here we explain everything that's going on. So, yeah. Yeah, the hand tools haven't changed very much at all. The torches, you probably wouldn't see a torch like this 100 years ago. Yep. I would say you wouldn't see that. So honestly, that is fairly recent in glassmaking. I would say in the last probably 40 years, people at the bench have used the torch. All right, the last piece, he's fire polishing the bottom. Now you guys promised you were going to get a big hoot and a holler at the end of the show. Are you ready? Hey, Annette! Awesome! What a fantastic way to kick off a Glass Fest. Awesome.